Well, again, Ben, thank you for coming out this morning to join us for these interviews. We previously introduced ourselves, but again, my name is John Paris. I'm here with Kevin Fung, the Vice President of the Asian American Group, as well as Mike Vaswani, the President of our Asian American Group. To give you a little background on us, the Asian American Group, or AAG, has been in existence for about 20 years now. Mike's been president or up in the hierarchy for those entire almost 2 decades. For about the last 6 or 7 years, we've been doing endorsement interviews for various county-wide, state-wide, and judicial races here in the Valley. What we do for purposes of our endorsements is, after we give all the candidates an opportunity to come in and speak with us, decisions are made regarding our panel as to who should be endorsed. We then not only inform the individuals of our endorsement, but we also print up slate cards and place them in various Asian businesses and restaurants. This year as well, we're going to be taking out ad space in numerous Asian newspapers and periodicals. As well, the weekend that early voting starts, I believe it's the 18th of October, we will be renting out a restaurant in Chinatown, a few blocks up the road, the Harbor Palace. We're going to serve lunch. We're going to give out our slate cards, and we will encourage everyone to engage in early voting, which conveniently can be done within the Chinatown complex itself. Literally 105 feet away from the front door is where one can go and do their early voting. So we do try and get the names out of the individuals who we endorse as a thank you for them coming out and engaging us in the interview process. So, before we turn on the camera, I'd inform you that Mr. Anderson could not be present today, and Mr. Juarez did not respond to our emails. So the first question that we're asking most people is this. Why did you decide to run for this particular race at this particular time?
Well, it's a pretty simple question. I have 3 grandchildren attending school in the state of Nevada, and looking at the results of the ratings of how Nevada is rated relative to other states, we appear to be either at the bottom or the bottom of all states. Matter of fact, I believe we're 51st behind Puerto Rico. Everybody talks about jobs and everybody talks about different things, but fundamentally, if you don't have an educated workforce or an informed workforce, they really can't fulfill the future needs of jobs and make proper decisions regarding elections and who's going to administrate their state and local and federal government. So I think education is a cornerstone. So the gentleman that I'm running against is head of the Education Committee and is running for his 3rd term. Yet nothing has been done relative to education that we can see relative to positive results. There's been no committee formed, there's been no identification of what the problem is, how other states have solved that problem, and how we should look at the success rates of other states in order to incorporate a better education system. So basically, I'm running because of education jobs. I've been in Nevada for almost 20 years, and I think something has to be done regarding those 2 issues. They have divisive issues because the Democrats feel one way, the Republicans feel one way, and the parents just want results. And I think that the bickering has to stop. There has to get a result directed committee that's going to look out and evaluate and see what can we do. And I don't think it's money, I don't think it's the teachers, and I don't think it's the unions, and I don't think it's the students, and I don't think it's the parents. But other cities and other states that face the same issue, and their students are getting a better education, which is going to be better for the students. So basic education, jobs, and natural resources in the state of Nevada has caused me to throw my hat in, so to speak, and run.
Let's talk about the education angle. You had mentioned you don't think it's an issue where we just throw money at the problem and that will magically solve everything. From more of a short-term perspective, though, what ideas do you have to try and correct, obviously, our anywhere between 47th to 51st in the nation status regarding our children's education?
Well, the first thing you do is you elect me. And the first thing I would do is make sure that the committee was formed, that we get a short-term results. Not a committee that would run for 3 or 4 years. We're not going to call Pew, we're not going to call Rand, we're not going to call Remington, we're not going to call Huston Institute. We have very competent people in the United States and educators that we can draw on, state and federal, within 90 days come up with a plan. That'll start a line for fast turnaround, quick fixes. We don't have the luxury spending 3 or 5 years of our children's time to determine what the solution is, or how to augment the solution. We have the ability, we have educators, and I think a lot of it is performance-based. In New Orleans, I was there right after the hurricane, in real estate and mortgage, and I'm from Louisiana. And the best thing that happened in Louisiana is all the schools were destroyed in New Orleans. Because now you have to start from new. You didn't have the unions, you didn't have the school board, you didn't have all these structures in place. So what they ended up doing is quickly starting charter schools. Why I'm a fan or not a fan of charter schools, same material. That result made New Orleans go from even worse than perhaps Nevada, from a city to a state level, to a very good, well-run educational system because they started new with new ideas, innovation. They competed for the students. And so I don't see that right now.
What impact do you think, either short or long term, this new Common Core curriculum is going to have for children? Specifically high school students, obviously.
Well, I'll make it very simple. If you asked 100 people to describe Common Core, probably 1 or 2 could. So it goes back, if you don't have an educated constituency or an educated populace, then you can't examine an issue for education like Common Core. Common Core fundamentally is opposed and liked by a couple of different groups of people. The fundamental issue in Common Core is the federal government stepping in and saying, we have 50 states. In those states are our residents and our citizens. So we want to have a Common Core program. So a person educated in Connecticut attends the same classes, the same types of programs that a person in Florida would take at the same time. So a sophomore is not taking algebra in California and trig in Florida if they move or migrate across the country. So Common Core basically sets up a group of Common Core classes taught across the country, but doesn't tell you how to teach them. It says you must teach mathematics, you must teach history, and so on. So we are a very diverse state. People perhaps in a state like Utah may want to teach a certain type of a program. It may be more, perhaps maybe more on creation than evolution, and so on. So we have this varying degrees that you can still teach different programs beyond Common Core, but you must teach the Common Core so it's uniform and fair, preparing these students for universities across the country. So I think Common Core in principle is not bad, but I think perhaps much of education should be reeled in and put back on a state level.
You had also mentioned national resources as one of the issues you have that's important in your program. With respect to mining, obviously they have been called to the carpet to pay a little more of the freight when it comes to the taxation, and they are now balking at the thoughts of having to pay more. We also have gaming, which does not want to pay a penny more in taxes either, but the state does seem to need more revenue based upon the recent recession. What ideas do you have to increase revenue here in the state of Nevada, be it going after mining or gaming or some other area of an untapped resource?
I think probably the first thing we have to do is not talk about taxes or income or revenues, talk about a budget of what it costs and what we want to pay in that budget. Then from what we know what the budget is, we should generate revenues relative to that budget instead of looking hindsight or backwards. I've been self-employed all of my life. I've been in real estate and mortgages for about 40 years. And it's hard to imagine that a company or a government, since they're very, very similar in nature, they both have employees, decides without knowing how much revenue they're going to have, how they're going to operate. It's almost the reverse type of logic. So let's take mining for just a moment. The people that are involved in state legislation involved in mining, I've looked at them, most of them do not have a background in mining. They do not know what the structured cost on mining is. If I wanted to build a casino, I could probably build a casino for $5 or $10 million. If I wanted to build a mine in the Carlin Trend, where 74% of all the gold in the United States comes from, because in the Carlin Trend, a very narrow band across the state represents 4/5 of the gold in the United States, between 74 and 80%. The capital investment might be between $250 million and $1 billion. So you're asking the company with an uncertain tax future to make those capital investments. So I think the goal for mining, for oil and gas and geothermal should not be how much we can tax them, but how much we can stimulate them to create more jobs. There's an infinite amount of geothermal. There's a tremendous amount of gold left in the Carlin Trend. So one side of government says, we need more revenue, so we're going to tax these people. Well, that's very myopic. Really what we should do is fast-track permits to expand these industries upon which we generate more revenue, and then we would have more revenue for our coffers, as opposed to see how much we can tariff or extract from them.
And I apologize, I cannot write and talk at the same time.
That's right.
The words out of my mouth tend to go on my page, so I'm taking some notes as to what you just said. And I also don't want to absolutely monopolize the interview. You guys can feel free to jump in.
See, an average mining job is about $68,000. So would it make more sense to have a fast-track committee in our natural resources to say, okay, are there more mining opportunities, and can we solicit mining companies from Canada and the rest of the world to come into a proven area of, as I say, gold and silver, that we create jobs at $68,000 that we could tax, as opposed to see how much we can burden the existing mining. And also, these taxes are very confusing to the public because they are not net operating taxes, they're gross taxes. So if the price of the commodity goes down, the mine will shut down and fire everybody because they cannot afford to operate when the world price of copper or gold goes down. So there must be some flexibility where that taxation is a function of profitability, not a function of gross revenues.
I'd like to change gears. I'd like to know what you think from more of a pragmatic standpoint. The registered voters in your particular district, well, the registered Republicans, I should say, are greatly outnumbered by the registered number of Democrats. What plans do you have to get, for lack of a better term, your army to the polls come this October and November to overcome that just plain numerical advantage that appears to exist?
Well, let's say I was a shareholder in a company. Let's call that company Apple. And let's say there were 3 or 4 groups of shareholders. One group represented 12,553 shares, would happen to be the Democratic group. The independent group would be about 4,300, and the Republican group, let's say 4,500. We all have invested in this company. We're all looking for the results for a dividend return. We all have different ideological beliefs in which way the company should operate. But we're shareholders, we're not operators. We're looking at right now in my district, myself and another party. If education is important, then I'm going to ask the people to step across party lines to decide if it's more important to be a Democrat or to educate your children, or it's more important to be a Republican and educate your children. Sometimes I think issues transgress ideologies, and the pragmaticness involved would be only able to go back and reach out to the 22,000 people in our district, Democrats, Republicans, and so on, and make a convincing argument that the current administration, which happens to be Democrat, has not done what you want them to do, and they should be fired and replaced with somebody. While they may have a different ideology, the outcome cannot be any worse than 51st.
I've asked that question. We've asked that question dozens and dozens of times, and I'm going to tell you to your face that was the best answer we've ever gotten. Plain and simple. We have about another 5 minutes. Mike or Kevin, do you have some questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like you say, education is your passion, for the kids, students, and all. But the problem is also the teachers. In Nevada, we don't have much qualified teachers, and there's always a shortage of teachers. Like last minute, we're still looking for 500 teachers for the school district. Why do you have to wait all the way to the end? But the other states don't have such problems with Nevada. Is it the pay? The salaries are lower here compared to other states?
I worry about people that have quick answers for complicated situations. It concerns me because it's flippant to say, this is a solution for that answer very quickly. I think that the answer is much more complicated than that. I think money is a part of it. Since I've been in real estate mortgages, I have probably done over 1,000 short sales and loan modifications. People have come into my office, I've talked to them, I've asked them how much money they make, what do they do, and so on and so forth. And I find I'm not picking one group as opposed to another group, but I think we should take that 90 days and find out what is the problem. We pay very close to some of the middle states for education. Those states that rank 25th, 28th, 29th. Our cost per student is close to that, so it's a problem. You will hear one side saying we pay too much for administration. You'll have one side saying we pay too much for school plans. You'll have one side saying that we have a disproportionate amount of illegal aliens in our school system, skewing the cost per student. But I think the simplest and most logical answer is to go back and find out what other states are doing, like Texas as an example, and Colorado that are more similar, and Arizona, border states similar to us. Even though we're not a border state, we have an influx of undocumented, which I will not call undocumented, I will call illegal aliens. If I walk into a liquor store and I hold them up, it's against the law. If I go into my neighbor's house and walk into the refrigerator and eat his food, that is a violation. If somebody comes to my sovereign country without inviting, that is a violation. I don't mean I have to shoot him or anything like that, but we have a burden of people here that we have not invited as part of the cost factor. They're not good people or bad people. They're human beings that deserve to be educated. So the simple answer is form a committee, find out what people are doing, find out if it's too much on administration, find out if it's too much on teachers, find out we should not be sending a bill to the federal government for undocumented workers that we're educating, and we should be educating, but we should not be paying the cost. Your home taxes should not be educating somebody that is here adverse to federal policy. So it's not, I'd like to give you a simple answer, but there is no simple answer. The simple answer is we have high school graduate policemen, who I'm glad we have as policemen or officers in our community, that are making $120,000 a year. And we have teachers with 5 and 6 and 7 year educational degrees and advanced degrees making $25,000 or $30,000 a year. So in life you kind of pay for, you get what you pay for. So perhaps the teachers are not paid enough, but then if you ask somebody for a raise to pay them more, they should be responsible for more production. So I don't know if a teacher ratio cost-benefit analysis is only the answer. I don't know if we have too big a structure. I do not know those answers, but I know that we're 51st and nothing's happening. So if we continue next year, I can verify to you in complete honesty that we'll be 51st in 2 years from now, unless we do something. So we have to go across the aisles, Democrats and Republicans, and we have to say, okay, I believe in this and I believe in this. We have different ideologies, that's true, but there are certain core functions that both parties agree in, and both parties, I believe, have a majority of a centrist interest. And those centrists are jobs, education, and things. So we have to bridge the gap and not be bound by this very rigid ideology on each side for a solution which we really, no one in this room, no, I can tell you what the solution is until we evaluate it and find something on a bipartisan path that solves the problem, not the bickering for our education.
What about the teachers union and they're trying to get a tax, 2% tax?
Okay.
Would that help? Because a lot of people are against it, but I think that would be, because of the problem we have in school, that, I think
That's a
would be
very
nice
good
idea.
question. I'm on the political action committee of the Board of Real Estate. However, the Board of Real Estate has endorsed my competitor, who is not a realtor, which is kind of a bit of irony. And so on. So I spoke at them, I think it was Wednesday this week at the board, and I got up and spoke. We have once again, a political action committee. The 2% tax is not a school tax. It's against the Constitution to have a state tax. You can have a city tax, you can have a state tax. So what will probably happen is it will not pass, but if it did pass, it would appear to be unconstitutional in nature because the Constitution prevents having a state tax, and that is a state tax. You can have a state license, but not a tax. Sometimes mixing the words. I'm a realtor, we make 3% in a transaction. If I do $3 million, okay, income, I'm taxed on that 3%. And I'm not taxed, if I hit $1 million, $1, I'm taxed retroactively. If I do $999,000, there's no tax at all. So it's not on figures above $1 million, it's once you hit $1 million, retroactively back. I think that is a regressive tax, doesn't solve anything, and most importantly, that is not a tax earmarked for schools. They say they will use the money for school, but unlike the tax on mining, which is hard written in the Constitution, that is a tax they purport to be used, and the backing of that is from education systems across the country that want more revenue. The teachers are underpaid in this state. That's not the process to pay them. When the head of the school board is paid more than the President of the United States of America, and when the fire marshal is paid more than the President of the United States, and when you have rank and file police that are paid more than a 2-star general, perhaps we should look at our pay scale. Also, you mentioned unions. We have been unfair to unions because unions have garnered concessions in Nevada that we can't pay, and we're going to be like Detroit in 20 years, but we don't have the revenue to pay the union's concessions. So it's unfair to sign a contract that we can't pay.